The Art Director's Debrief Special Investigation, Part 4, The Rebellious Philosophy, Challenging Core Values. Hello and welcome back to the Emotive Archive. We have explored the world that created Fanny Hill, the journey of its heroine, and the brilliant literary form that cloaked its scandalous content. Today, we strip away that final cloak. We will confront the very heart of the novel's crime, its ideas. For what truly made Fanny Hill so dangerous, so utterly threatening to the 18th century establishment, was not just its explicit descriptions, but its profound and rebellious philosophy. This was not merely a pornographic work, it was a philosophical one. A book that dared to ask deeply uncomfortable questions about God, pleasure, sexuality, class, and the very definition of happiness. In this, our fourth deep dive, we will analyze the forbidden truths that made this book a masterpiece of subversion. We will explore its godless world, its radical celebration of female pleasure, its surprisingly modern depiction of same-sex desire, and its brutal critique of upper-class hypocrisy. This is the anatomy of a rebellion. Let us begin with the novel's most shocking and fundamental transgression, its complete and utter secularism. We must remember that 18th century England was a deeply religious society. The church was a central pillar of social and political life. The dominant literary form, as exemplified by Richardson's Pamela, was steeped in a Christian moral framework. In these stories, the universe was governed by a watchful, judgmental God. Virtue, specifically female chastity, was a divine mandate. Sin, particularly sexual sin, was a stain on the soul that would inevitably lead to divine retribution, if not in this life, then certainly in the next. The fear of God and eternal damnation was the ultimate check on human behavior. Fanny Hill takes this entire framework and quietly, calmly, and completely dismantles it. The world Fanny inhabits is a world without God. The word God is used occasionally as a mild expletive, but the concept of a divine, judging entity is entirely absent. Fanny's actions are never framed in terms of sin or salvation. She does not pray for forgiveness. She is never tormented by the fear of hellfire. Her moral compass is entirely internal and social. The consequences of her actions are real, but they are tangible and worldly. Poverty, disease, the loss of a lover, the risk of imprisonment. They are never supernatural. This creation of a purely secular moral universe was, for its time, a radical and deeply unsettling act. Cleland presents a world where human beings are the sole architects of their own fortunes and misfortunes. A world governed not by divine law, but by human desire, human error, and social convention. The great drama of sin and redemption is replaced by a far more modern drama of economic survival and social maneuvering. This secularism is what allows for the novel's second and perhaps most famous rebellion, its celebration of female pleasure. In the patriarchal Christian worldview of the 18th century, female sexuality was a dangerous and problematic force. A respectable woman's sexuality was meant to be entirely passive, a duty to be performed for her husband for the purpose of procreation. A woman who actively sought or enjoyed sexual pleasure was seen as monstrous, a fallen woman who had succumbed to her base animalistic nature. Pleasure, for women, was synonymous with sin. Fanny Hill is a direct and joyous assault on this entire ideology. The novel's subtitle is not Memoirs of a Woman of Suffering, but Memoirs of a Woman of Pleasure. Fanny's journey is not a descent into the misery of lust, but an ascent into the art and science of pleasure. She is not a passive object of male desire. She is an active, curious, and often enthusiastic participant. Her first-person narrative gives us, for the first time in literature, a detailed, subjective account of the female orgasm. She describes her physical sensations with a language of wonder, of discovery, of ecstasy. She is not just a body being acted upon. She is a consciousness experiencing and analyzing her own pleasure. Furthermore, she presents pleasure not as a moral failing, but as a natural, healthy, and even empowering force. It is a source of joy, a form of connection, and ultimately, a skill that she learns to master. By giving Fanny a voice to articulate her own desire and her own pleasure, Cleland performs a revolutionary act. He reclaims female sexuality from the realm of sin and shame and places it in the realm of natural human experience. He suggests that a woman's body is her own, and that her pleasure is a valid and worthy subject of exploration. This was a message so far ahead of its time that it would take another 200 years of feminist struggle for it to even begin to enter the mainstream. The novel's rebellious exploration of sexuality does not stop at heterosexual pleasure. In one of its most daring and, for its time, shocking sections, Cleland includes a detailed and sympathetic depiction of a same-sex female relationship. When Fanny resides at the brothel, she forms an intimate bond with another young woman, Phoebe. Their relationship is described with the same warmth, tenderness, and sensual detail as Fanny's encounters with men. It is not presented as a perverse or monstrous deviation, but as a natural and affectionate expression of their shared situation. They find solace, pleasure, and a form of non-patriarchal companionship in each other's arms. This inclusion of a lesbian encounter was an extraordinary bravery in 1748. While male homosexuality was a criminal offense, female homosexuality existed in a strange legal and social void, often dismissed or rendered invisible. By depicting it openly and without condemnation, Cleland was pushing the boundaries of what was considered representable in literature. He was acknowledging a spectrum of human desire that the respectable world of his time was desperately trying to ignore. While the novel celebrates the honest, natural pleasures of its heroine, it simultaneously launches a brutal and satirical attack on the hidden, unnatural desires of the ruling class. The clients Fanny encounters are a gallery of grotesques, a cross-section of the hypocrisy of the English elite. They are the respectable men, the aristocrats, the politicians, the wealthy merchants who publicly uphold the nation's moral standards, but in the privacy of the brothel, they reveal their true natures. We meet men with bizarre, often comical fetishes. There is the man who can only be aroused by being whipped, the man who finds pleasure in watching others, and the man with an obsession with virginity. These portraits are a brilliant and savage critique of the patriarchal establishment. Cleland suggests that the very men who condemn women like Fanny for their unnatural lives are themselves driven by desires that are far more strange and perverse. Their public piety is a mask for their private depravity. The brothel, in this sense, becomes a truth-telling space, a stage where the hypocrisy of the ruling class is stripped bare. The true monsters in Fanny Hill are not the prostitutes, but the powerful men who use them to act out the desires they are too cowardly to acknowledge in the light of day. This leads us to the novel's final overarching philosophical rebellion, its radical redefinition of happiness. The traditional 18th century novel presented a very clear formula for female happiness: virtue, chastity, and a good marriage. A woman's happiness was a direct reward for her moral purity. Fanny Hill completely demolishes this formula. Fanny is, by her society standards, the opposite of virtuous. She is a prostitute. Yet the novel concludes with her achieving a state of perfect happiness. She is wealthy, she is respected, and she is married to the man she truly loves. How is this possible? The novel's answer is a direct challenge to the Christian framework of its time. Fanny's happiness is not a reward for her virtue, but a reward for her virtues, plural. She is not chaste, but she is kind. She is not pious, but she is honest. She is not a virgin, but she possesses a fundamental goodness of heart and a profound capacity for love and friendship. Most importantly, she is intelligent. She learns from her experiences. She manages her finances wisely, and she navigates a dangerous world with skill and pragmatism. The novel's ultimate philosophy is a deeply humanistic and secular one. It argues that happiness is not a gift from God bestowed upon the pure. It is a state of being that is achieved through worldly wisdom, self-knowledge, resilience, and the clever seizing of opportunity. Fanny Hill is the ultimate survivor, the ultimate pragmatist. Her happy ending is the final, triumphant rebellion, a declaration that a woman's worth and her right to happiness should be defined not by a rigid and hypocritical moral code, but by the strength of her character and the intelligence of her choices. This is the forbidden philosophy that makes the book so dangerous and so timeless. Now that we have anatomized the rebellious ideas at the heart of Fanny Hill, let us elevate our analysis and propose a final, radical thesis. We have seen how the novel challenges the religious, sexual, and social norms of its time. But I will now argue that Fanny Hill is more than just a social critique. It is one of the first and most profound expressions of a revolutionary philosophy that was just beginning to sweep the Western world, a philosophy that would go on to inspire the American and French revolutions. This is not just the memoir of a woman of pleasure. This is a declaration of independence. Fanny Hill is a proto-capitalist and Enlightenment-era manifesto on the individual's inalienable right to the pursuit of happiness. Let us first consider the intellectual atmosphere of the late 1740s. Philosophers like John Locke had already laid the groundwork, arguing that individuals possess natural rights to life, liberty, and property. The idea of the individual as a rational agent, free to pursue their own self-interest, was gaining ground. A few decades later, these ideas would be codified in the American Declaration of Independence, which famously asserts the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This phrase is key. The Declaration does not guarantee happiness itself, but the pursuit of it. It frames happiness not as a state of being granted by a king or a god, but as an active, individual quest. Fanny Hill, I argue, is a fictional embodiment of this very principle. Fanny Hill is the ultimate entrepreneur of the self. She arrives in London with nothing, no money, no family, no status. Her only capital is her own body, her youth, and her innate intelligence. In a world that offers her no legitimate path to advancement, she takes this initial capital and invests it in the only market available to her, the market of pleasure. She does not see herself as a sinner. She sees herself as a business owner. The brothel is her university, where she acquires the skills of her trade. Her clients are not lovers, they are customers. Her encounters are not moral failings, they are transactions. She learns to manage her assets, to understand the market, to negotiate contracts, and to build her wealth. This is the language of capitalism applied to the world of sex. Her narrative is a perfect chronicle of this capitalist journey. She starts as an exploited laborer working for a pittance under the tyrannical Mrs. Brown. She then moves up, becoming a kept mistress, a position akin to having an exclusive contract with a single patron. But her ultimate goal is to become an independent operator, a woman who controls her own means of production. And she succeeds. She becomes a high-class courtesan, managing her own affairs, choosing her own clients, and accumulating her own capital. Her story is a perfect, if scandalous, allegory for the bourgeois dream of upward mobility through hard work and savvy investment. She is a self-made woman in the most literal sense of the word. Furthermore, The novel's philosophy of pleasure itself is deeply rooted in the new empirical spirit of the Enlightenment. Fanny's approach to sex is not mystical or romantic. It is scientific. She is an explorer, a naturalist charting the unknown territory of the human body and its responses. She observes, she experiments, she classifies. Her detailed, almost clinical descriptions of different sexual acts and different types of male desire are a form of data collection. She is creating a taxonomy of pleasure. This is a radical departure from the religious view of sex as a mysterious, shameful, and divinely ordained act. Fanny secularizes sex, transforming it from a moral issue into a scientific one. She is a philosopher of the flesh, applying the rational, observational methods of the Enlightenment to the most irrational of human drives. In doing so, she is making a profound statement that our bodies and our desires are not a source of sin to be feared, but a part of the natural world to be understood, explored, and yes, enjoyed. This brings us to the novel's conclusion, which, through this lens, is not just a happy ending, but a philosophical triumph. Fanny's marriage to her first love, Charles, is the final acquisition, the ultimate return on her investment. She does not come to this marriage as a penniless, dependent virgin. She comes to it as a wealthy, experienced, and independent woman. She marries him not out of economic necessity, but out of genuine affection. She has, through her unconventional career, achieved the very thing that a respectable marriage was supposed to provide: financial security. And by doing so, she has earned the freedom to marry for love. Her story is a radical argument that the pursuit of economic independence and the pursuit of personal happiness are not mutually exclusive, but are in fact deeply intertwined. In conclusion, Fanny Hill is far more than just a banned book. It is a revolutionary one. It is a work of art that, under the guise of an erotic memoir, channels the most radical philosophical currents of its time. It is a declaration that every individual, regardless of their gender or social standing, has the right to pursue their own happiness. It suggests that this pursuit is not a spiritual quest, but a practical, worldly one, involving economic savvy, psychological insight, and a rational understanding of one's own desires. Fanny Hill is not a harlot. She is an Enlightenment hero, an entrepreneur of the self, a woman who dared to claim her own right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of pleasure. And that is a philosophy so powerful, so threatening to the established order, that it took the world over 200 years to finally be ready to hear it. Thank you for joining me in the Emotive Archive.